Alrighty, let's take off. Number 1. The Pulsar Planets. Here is the part nobody tells you. The first planets we ever found outside our own solar system were not warm little worlds circling a friendly sun. They were 3 rocks orbiting a corpse, and that corpse should have killed them. Picture the star that used to be here. It got old, it collapsed, and then it detonated as a supernova, one of the most violent events the universe can produce. Anything nearby was vaporized. When the light cleared, what was left was a neutron star, a city-sized ball of crushed matter, spinning more than 160 times every single second, firing 2 beams of radiation out into space like a lighthouse built to sterilize. And around that thing, in 1992, a Polish astronomer named Alexander Wolszczan found planets. Not 1, 3 of them. He found them by watching the pulsar's beam. Every time it swept past Earth, it ticked like the most accurate clock ever built, and those ticks were being dragged, ever so slightly, early and late, by the gravity of worlds we couldn't see. The tug was so faint, it belonged to objects thousands of light years away, and he felt it anyway. Now stand on one of them. There is no sunrise. Instead, a blade of radiation whips across your sky faster than you can blink. Over and over, a strobe of pure death. The ground is bathed in a ghost light of glowing gas. Nothing grows. Nothing ever could. One of these planets, the little one, has a mass only twice our moon's. To this day, it's the smallest planet we've ever weighed, and it lives in the worst neighborhood in the galaxy. So, how are they there at all? The answer is worse than the question. These planets are second generation. They didn't survive the explosion. They were built from its wreckage, gathered out of the debris the dying star flung off, a graveyard that spun itself into new worlds. Life's story, run in reverse. Death first, planets after. We went looking for other Earths, and the very first thing the universe showed us was 3 tombstones orbiting a strobe light. It should have been a warning, because if planets can grow from the ashes of a supernova, then the rules we brought with us were already wrong, and the next world only makes that worse. Number 2, WD 1856b. Every star like our sun ends the same way. It swells into a red giant, big enough to swallow its inner planets whole, then it sheds its skin and shrinks into a white dwarf, a dead ember about the size of Earth, still holding almost half the mass of a full star. That's the future. That's where everything close in goes to die. So here's a planet doing something it isn't allowed to do. It's still there. WD 1856b is a giant, about the size of Jupiter, and it whips around its dead white dwarf once every 34 hours. Let that land. A full year on this world, the entire trip around its sun, takes less time than you'll spend awake this weekend. It sits so close it's almost touching the ember, and its sun is a brilliant white pinprick no bigger than the planet you're standing on. We found it in 2020, using 2 of NASA's telescopes, 80 light years away in the constellation of the Dragon. And the moment we found it, we had a problem. Because when this star was a red giant, it puffed up way past where the planet now sits, which means the planet's orbit runs straight through space the star used to fill. It should have been inside the fire. It should have been swallowed, cooked, dragged down, gone. There is no version of the story where it just sat here and wrote it out. So it didn't. Something moved it. The best guess is that after the star died and shrank, this giant came falling in from somewhere safer, pulled inward by other stars lurking in the system, and parked itself in a spot that only exists because its sun already died. It moved into the grave after the funeral. And then, in 2026, the James Webb Telescope looked closer and found something that made no sense on top of the nonsense. This planet appears to have kept its atmosphere. It went through the death of its star and held onto its air. Think about what that means for us. This is a preview. Billions of years from now, when our own sun does exactly this, The question won't be whether Earth burns. It's whether anything at all is still clinging to the wreckage afterward. This world says maybe. And it's not even the strangest survivor on this list. Number 3. LHS 3154b. Some planets are impossible because of what they do. This one is impossible because of arithmetic. On paper, it cannot exist. And yet, in 2023, we found it anyway. Start with the star. LHS 3154 is a red dwarf, a small, dim, sulking little furnace with only about 11% the mass of our sun. Stars that small are supposed to be the safe, boring option. They're born inside a thin disk of gas and dust, and there just isn't much material to go around. So the rule is simple. A star this tiny can make you a few small rocky planets. That's it. That's the whole menu. The most it should ever manage is something around 5 times Earth's mass. LHS 3154b is at least 13 times Earth's mass. It's basically a Neptune. You can't build a Neptune from a disk that thin. The math doesn't stretch. To make a planet this heavy, that little star would have needed something like 10 times more raw material than it could ever have had. It's like watching someone build a battleship out of a single bucket of scrap and refusing to explain where the steel came from. And it isn't loitering out at a safe distance either. This oversized world circles its dim star in just 3.7 days, hugged in close, whipping around a fire far too small to have made it. The astronomers who found it didn't announce a fun new discovery. They basically admitted their theory was broken. The nickname wrote itself. The impossible planet. Because either these tiny stars can gather far more material than we ever believed, or planets can form in a way we don't understand at all. There's no comfortable third option, and here's the part that should make the back of your neck cold. Red dwarfs like this one are the most common stars in the entire galaxy. There are more of them than everything else combined. So if just one of them can pull off the impossible, then the sky is full of stars that might be doing the same thing, quietly where we haven't thought to look. We didn't find a freak. We found a crack in the rules, and the next planet climbed right through it. Number 4. Tawai 849b. You will never see the inside of a planet. Not really. Jupiter has a core, buried under thousands of miles of crushing gas, and no probe will ever reach it. The center of a giant world is one of the most hidden places that exists. Unless someone tears the giant open and leaves the middle sitting in plain view. That's Toy 849b. It is a planet with its outsides ripped off. We found it in 2020, about 730 light years away, orbiting a star a lot like our sun. And the numbers are wrong in a beautiful way. It has around 40 times the mass of Earth, but it's crammed into a ball only 3.5 times Earth's width. That makes it savagely dense, about as dense as Earth itself, which for something Neptune-sized is absurd. It means this world is almost all iron and rock and water, with barely a wisp of gas on top, which is the giveaway. A planet this heavy should be a gas giant. 40 Earth masses is more than enough to grab a thick, deep atmosphere and become the next Jupiter. But the atmosphere isn't there. What's left is just the core, the naked heart of a world that was supposed to be huge. So where did the rest go? 2 options, and both are grim. Either this planet was born a giant, and something stripped it, tore the gas away, and left the center exposed. Or it started to become a giant, reached for that thick envelope, and for some reason never managed to hold on. It failed to finish, and got frozen halfway. And the place it lives makes it worse. It sits in a stretch of space astronomers call the Neptune Desert, a zone so close to the star that Neptune-sized planets almost never survive there. The radiation should erase them. This one is parked right in the kill zone, 18 hours to a year, glowing at 1500 degrees, refusing to disappear. So, you get to do the thing no one is meant to do. You get to stand on the exposed core of a gas giant and look up at its star from the inside of what should have been buried forever. It's an autopsy the universe performed on itself and then left on the table for us to find. And the next world doesn't sit still long enough to examine. Number 5. HR 5183b. Planets are supposed to be polite. They form in a flat disk, they settle into nice round orbits, and they stay in their lane for billions of years. That's the deal. Our solar system runs on it. Almost every world we know keeps to a gentle circle. And then there's this one, which drives like it's being chased. HR 5183b is a giant, more than 3 times the mass of Jupiter. But forget its size. It's the path that's insane. Most of the time, it drifts far out in the cold, deep freeze edge of its system, way past where Neptune would be, barely moving, barely warmed. And then it falls. It comes screaming inward, accelerating the whole way, swings hard around its star like a car taking a hairpin at full speed, and flings itself right back out into the dark. Astronomers nicknamed it the Whiplash Planet, and they earned that name the hard way. Its full orbit takes something like 74 years. Nobody has ever watched it finish one. We caught it in the act of the slingshot, watched it come in and start heading back out, and that single violent curve was so distinctive, they knew it was real without ever seeing a complete loop. Now think about what it would take to put a planet on a track like this. You don't get an orbit this stretched by being calm. Something had to hit it. And the leading story is a crime scene. This planet almost certainly used to have a sibling, another giant of roughly the same size. They got too close. Their gravity locked up in a brutal tug of war, and when it broke, one of them was thrown clean out of the system, gone forever into interstellar space. HR 5183b was the winner. This wrecked comet-like orbit is what winning looks like. So it's not just a weird world. It's a survivor of a fight that ejected a whole planet. Every 74 years it makes that same lonely lap, out to the freezing dark and back through the fire, dragging the memory of the one it beat. The universe didn't hand it a strange orbit. It fought for it, and the next planet didn't fight to stay. It got exiled. Number 6. HD 106906b. There's lonely, and then there's this. Imagine being thrown so far from home that home is just another star, a point of light you could cover with your thumb. That's where this planet lives, and getting there broke every idea we had about how far a world can form from its sun. HD 106906b is a super Jupiter, about 11 times the mass of Jupiter, a genuine heavyweight, and it orbits its star at a distance of roughly 737 times the gap between Earth and the Sun. To put that in your body, if you dropped it into our solar system, it would sit more than 20 times farther out than Neptune. So far out that Neptune, our idea of the distant frozen frontier, would look practically cozy by comparison. We spotted it in 2013, and the distance alone should stop you cold. Because planets are supposed to be built from the disk of material around a young star. And that disk gets thinner and emptier the farther out you go. At 700 AU, there is almost nothing. Not enough gas, not enough dust, nowhere near enough to slowly assemble an 11 Jupiter giant out there. It could not have formed where it is now. Full stop. So it must have been thrown. The best guess is that it was born much closer in the crowded region near its star, and then something launched it. Its home is a tight pair of stars orbiting each other, with a lopsided, disturbed belt of comets all around. The wreckage of a system that got roughed up. Maybe those stars kicked it. Maybe a passing star finished the job, nudging it into permanent exile. Astronomers noticed something else, too. It behaves eerily like the mysterious Planet 9 some think is hiding at the edge of our own solar system. A giant world, flung to the frozen outskirts, circling from a place it was never supposed to be. Which means whatever happened here might be lurking in our own backyard. So picture standing on it. Your sun is a distant sparkle, giving you nothing, warming nothing. The dark is total, and you are still bound to it, still falling around it, an exile that never quite got free. The universe didn't lose this planet. It threw it away on purpose, and the next world isn't cold at all. It's on fire and frozen at the same time. Number 7. GJ436b. Ice is cold. That's the whole idea of ice. It's what water does when the heat leaves. So here is a planet where the ice is hot enough to cook you, and it stays solid anyway. And once you understand why, a little piece of your intuition breaks and never fully heals. GJ436b is a hot Neptune, only about 30 light-years away, circling a small red dwarf star. Its surface sits at more than 400 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than your oven on its highest setting. Nothing about that place should be frozen, and yet the water there is locked into solid ice. Here's the trick, and it's genuinely strange. On Earth, water freezes because it gets cold. Take the heat away, the molecules slow down, they lock into a crystal. But there's another way to freeze water, and it has nothing to do with temperature. You can crush it. This planet is a Neptune, big and heavy, and its gravity squeezes the water with such monstrous pressure that the molecules are forced to pack into a solid no matter how hot they get. It's not ice because it's cold. It's ice because it has nowhere left to go. So the ground is a scorching, glowing, high-pressure ice that would burn you if the heat didn't get you first. Steaming and solid at the same time. Fire and ice stopped being opposites and moved in together. And that's not even the weirdest thing about it. This planet trails a gigantic tail. It's leaking a stream of hydrogen off into space, a comet-like plume so enormous it's actually bigger than the star it orbits. A Neptune-sized world with a tail longer than its sun. On top of that, its orbit is tilted and stretched in a way that shouldn't last. A quiet hint that something in this system shoved it around a long time ago, and the scars never healed. So take a breath and hold the contradiction. A world of burning ice, dragging a tail across its own sun, on an orbit that whispers of old violence. Every instinct you have says ice means cold, and cold means safe. This planet says none of that was ever a law. It was just the only version of water you'd ever met. And the next world breaks a different rule. It runs backward. Number 8. WASP-17b. Everything in a solar system tends to spin the same way. The star turns one direction, and the planets, born from the same swirling disk, orbit in that same direction, all of it turning together like parts of one machine. It's so consistent, it's basically a law. So meet the planet that orbits backward, and is made of almost nothing, and rains glass. WASP-17b is the rebel of the exoplanet world, and it earns it 3 ways over. First, the direction. When we found it in 2009, it became the first planet ever caught orbiting against its star's spin. Everything else in that system turns one way. This giant goes the other. And a backward orbit is not something you're born with. You cannot form like that in a nice, tidy disk. It means that at some point, this world got into a gravitational brawl, got scattered or flipped, and came out the far side, spinning the wrong way. Its whole path is a confession that something violent happened here. Second, the density, or the near total lack of it. WASP-17b is enormous, almost twice the width of Jupiter, but it barely weighs anything for its size. Its density is only a fraction of Jupiter's, so low that people compare it to styrofoam. It's a planet you could imagine floating in a bathtub the size of a solar system. Puffed up, bloated, absurdly light. A giant made mostly of air. And third, the weather, which is where it goes fully unreal. In 2023, the James Webb Telescope looked into its atmosphere and found clouds made of quartz. Actual crystals of the same mineral in beach sand and window glass, floating high in the sky as tiny grains a fraction of the width of a human hair. Up there, glass forms in the air and drifts on winds screaming around the planet, a haze of microscopic gems catching the light of a nearby star. So picture it all at once. A world so puffed up it's barely there, sailing the wrong way around its own sun, wrapped in clouds of shimmering glass. It reads like something a child would invent, and it's real. And it's up there right now. And the next planet is stranger in the quietest way possible, because it was the first one we ever managed to photograph, and its sun isn't a real star. Number 9, 2M1207b. For most of history, we never actually saw a planet around another star. We felt them. We watched stars wobble or dim and did the math and said, something's there. But an actual photograph, a picture of a world circling a distant sun, was science fiction. Until 2004, when we finally took one. And the thing in the photo shouldn't quite make sense. 2M1207b was the first exoplanet we ever directly imaged. A real picture, taken by a giant telescope in Chile, of a faint red dot hanging in the dark beside its sun. That alone makes it historic. But look closer at what it's orbiting, because that's where it gets strange. Its sun is not a star, not a real one. It's a brown dwarf, an object that tried to become a star and failed. It gathered gas and dust like a star would, but it never got heavy enough to ignite the fire in its core, so it just sits there, dim and cooling, a permanent almost. And around this failed star orbits a giant planet about 5 times the mass of Jupiter, glowing a deep, sullen red all on its own from the leftover heat of its birth. So think about how backwards that is. The planet is the bright one. In that photograph, the world glows warmer and redder than the failed star it circles. It's the child outshining the parent, out at a distance nearly twice as far as Neptune is from our sun. And nobody's quite sure how you make it. A 5 Jupiter giant orbiting a tiny failed star way out in the cold doesn't fit the neat story of planets slowly assembling in a disk. It looks more like the two of them formed together, collapsing side by side out of the same cloud, like a miniature pair of stars where one just barely lost. Which raises an uncomfortable question. Is it even a planet? Or is it something we don't have a clean name for? That was the first world we ever saw with our own eyes, and it walked in blurring the line between planet and star, refusing to sit in either box. We wanted a photograph of another world. We got a red ghost orbiting a failure, and a question we still haven't answered. And the next planet answers a question we thought was already settled. Can a world survive its star growing old? Number 10. 8 UMIB, also called Halla. Way back at the start, you met 3 planets that survived the death of a star by being born from its ashes. Hold that thought, because this one survived a death too, and it did it the hard way. It didn't get to skip the disaster. It sat through it. Halla is a gas giant, orbiting a star called Bechdou at about half the distance between Earth and our Sun. Nice and close, cozy, the kind of orbit that should be a warm place to live. Except Bechdou isn't a normal star anymore. It's a red giant. It already went through the aging process, where a dying star swells up into a bloated monster. And when astronomers ran the numbers on how big Bechdou got when it ballooned, they found something that stopped them dead. The star expanded out to about a distance of 0.7. The planet orbits at 0.5. The star's surface swelled out past the planet's orbit, which means, at the peak of its expansion, this world should have been inside the star. Not near it, inside it. Swallowed, engulfed, dissolved in the outer layers of a red giant. There is no gentle version. This planet's orbit sits in a place the star physically occupied, and Halla is still there, whole, orbiting calmly, as if nothing happened. So how? Astronomers are honest that they're not fully sure, but the best idea is almost stranger than the survival. Bagdu may not have been one star. It may have been two, a pair that spiraled together and merged. And that merger could have changed the whole story, either stopping the star from ever swelling large enough to reach the planet, or blasting out a cloud of debris that built Halla fresh, a brand new world assembled from the wreckage of a stellar collision. Either way, you're looking at a planet that either dodged being eaten alive by its own sun, or was born out of the violence that reshaped it. The headlines called it a planet that shouldn't exist, and for once that wasn't hype. It's sitting exactly where the fire was, keeping the seat warm. And the next world flips the whole problem around. It's not the planet that shouldn't survive. It's the planet that never should have formed at all. Number 11, NGTS-1b. Little stars are supposed to make little planets. That's the sensible rule. A small, dim red dwarf is born with a small, thin disk of material, and from that skimpy budget, you can build some rocky worlds, maybe a few modest ones, and that's the ceiling. What you absolutely cannot do, the theory says, is build a monster. So of course, we found a monster. NGTS-1b is a hot Jupiter, a full-blown gas giant, and it's orbiting a red dwarf that has no business owning it. The star is small and faint, exactly the kind that's meant to stay in the rocky planet business. And yet wrapped around it is a giant the size of Jupiter, whipping through a complete orbit in just 2.5 days, roasting at close range. When we found it in 2017, it broke a record. Compared to its little star, this was the largest planet, for the size of its host, that anyone had ever seen. The ratio was so lopsided that astronomers genuinely weren't sure it was even possible. A giant that big needs a huge amount of gas and dust to pull together, and a star that small was never supposed to have that much lying around. The lead scientists didn't hide it. They flat out called the discovery a complete surprise, a planet that shouldn't be there. And here's the part that turns a curiosity into something bigger. Red dwarfs aren't rare. They are the most common star in the entire galaxy. Roughly 3 out of every 4 stars near us are these little dim furnaces. For a long time, we assumed they were the boring ones, incapable of hosting giants, not worth checking for monsters. This planet says we were wrong. So do the math on that. If small stars can secretly build giants, and small stars are most of the stars there are, then the galaxy could be hiding an enormous population of monster planets we simply never bothered to look for, hidden behind dim little stars we wrote off. NGTS-1b isn't just one impossible world. It's a hint that the impossible might be everywhere, sitting in plain sight, behind the faintest lights in the sky. And the last world takes that doubt and points it at the discovery itself. Number 12. HD1 31399 AB. We'll end with the most beautiful impossible world of all, and then we'll do something uncomfortable to it. Because this planet has 3 suns, and the sky it hangs under is unlike anything in human imagination. HD1 31399. AB is a young gas giant, about 4 times the mass of Jupiter, and we photographed it directly in 2016. It lives in a system with 3 separate stars, one bright, dominant sun that it orbits, and a second pair of stars off in the distance, circling each other while both circle the big one. And this planet loops around the whole arrangement on a staggeringly wide orbit that takes roughly 550 years to complete. Stand on it, and the sky becomes a machine you can't quite predict. For part of that long year, all 3 suns are up at once, scattered across the sky at different brightnesses, throwing overlapping shadows in different colors. and for a stretch of about 140 years at a time, the suns are arranged so that it's never fully night. Constant daylight for longer than any human has ever lived. Then, slowly, the arrangement shifts, and you get triple sunsets no poem could keep up with, and it shouldn't be able to hold that orbit. In a system with 3 stars all pulling in different directions, a wide orbit like this is supposed to be unstable. The competing gravity should have grabbed this planet and flung it out into the dark long ago. Its calm, impossible loop through a chaos of suns was one of the strangest things we'd ever imaged. Now, the uncomfortable part. Because this is where I have to be honest with you. That gorgeous 3-sun world may not be a planet at all. After the discovery, other astronomers took a harder look and argued that the dot in the image might not be bound to those stars. It might be a far more distant star, sitting behind them by pure chance, a background object we mistook for a world with 3 suns. That debate is real, and it is not fully settled. And maybe that's the perfect place to end, because every planet on this list was called impossible, and the universe kept them anyway. This last one might be impossible in a different way. It might be the world that was never there. We keep drawing lines the cosmos was never asked to respect, and one by one, it steps over every single one of them, and it never once explains itself.